Welcome to the Bill Levinson Experience, a motivational podcast relating to the insurance brokerage industry and business in general. And now, here's Bill Levinson.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Bill Levinson Experience. Once again, we have a great featured guest speaker that's very, very well known in our industry, and very appreciative of him joining us today and taking time out of his busy schedule. So with me today, we have Bill Atlee, who's actually the founder of iPipeline. Okay, so if you're related to our industry, I know we have a lot of agents on here. We have a lot of friends of mine. We have guests from all over the world, literally. So we appreciate you taking the time, first off, and then second, yes, if you're related to our industry, you've heard of iPipeline. It's a common phrase used around our industry, just like Amazon or Apple. Okay, very, very well known. If you are not related to our industry, that's no problem. I believe that everyone will walk away with some great nuggets of information. Bill is a trailblazer in our industry and in business in general, and I know everybody would love to hear his story, what his focus was, and how he made it through roadblocks and obstacles and stayed focused throughout all of this. And to be where he is today is unbelievable. So I truly couldn't wait for this day because I wanted everyone to hear this great, great story. What I want to start off with just mentioning is how I met Bill and how I came across his company, iPipeline. I think it's so important. So as everyone knows, we're in the insurance brokerage industry, and we've been around since 1972. I came into the company just over 20 years ago. Kerry, my father, started this company. And when I came in, there was a big lack of technology. And years ago, I said to myself, there's a few companies out there that have these websites, and, people are going online now, and we have to get involved. We have to create an insurance brokerage website. And wouldn't it be cool if we had forms and a quote engine? And, and I started doing some research, and basically there was one game in town, and that was iPipeline. And I remember seeing a few websites around at the time, and trust me, there was only a few, and it looked almost like a slot machine. There was a wheel at the top that would keep running, and that was basically the only graphics that we had. But you know what? At that time, that was a huge move in the right direction for our industry. So I saw a few of these sites. I said, you know what? I got to jump on board. I think at the time it was like $6,000 or $7,000. I got in a huge fight with my father because he said, you're crazy. Why are you spending all this money on technology? And I said, Dad, this is the future. We have to do this. And without him knowing, I spent the company's money on our first, we called it CarrieLevinson.com website. So we joined forces with iPipeline. That was like 15, 20 years ago. And, obviously, fast forward to today, if you don't have a website, you're obviously behind the eight ball, okay? Like Gary Vee says, it's like riding a horse around in downtown Manhattan. It just doesn't happen. So anyway, here we had one of the top websites, in my opinion, in the insurance world, and iPipeline was behind all of this. And as the years went on, we started looking into e-applications and e-policy delivery. And, I would hear these webinars and I would attend a lot of these meetings that Bill was a part of and iPipeline was a part of. And I remember sitting on panels, right, at some of these big industry meetings. And I remember one time I literally was touching knees with the guy next to me who was Bill Atlee, and we obviously have the same name, so I took interest and I always looked up to him and his company and what they have done to our industry. So here we are sitting on a panel together talking to the crowd, right, who was mostly made up of carriers and people in compliance, and some were related to the government and different insurance companies and IMOs, and we're on the same team, pitching e-applications and why this is the future, and how if the carriers don't get involved, they're going to fall behind the 8 ball. So we did this with e-applications and drop tickets, and then e-policy delivery, and then here we are, fast forward to today, right? And the agents call us, and a lot of times they don't even care about the company name or ratings. They just say, hey, Bill, we want a carrier that has drop tickets, e-apps, and e-policy delivery. I don't even care what the name of the company is. So, look how times have changed. To me, it's mind-boggling. And, I was a big part of this, and Bill Atlee was the one who made it all happen. So, I just look back and I laugh to myself on how we were on the other side of the fence, trying to convince everybody that they need to spend money on technology. One other thing I want to mention before I introduce Bill is I remember I used to, sit in these meetings and be on these webinars, and Bill Atlee would be the host, and he would use these stick figures, on his presentations to say, client B would purchase from agent C, and, and why, drop tickets and IGO, why it was so important. He would show us how everything worked, and I was floored because, you often hear presenters and speakers and related to the tech side, the carrier side, and, yes, you try to walk away with good information, but it's not often to where you scratch your head and you say, wow, this guy knows what he's doing. He knows how to present, and he gets it, because most people don't, unfortunately, especially in the insurance industry. So anyway, very, very impressed with what he has done, and that's exactly why we wanted to feature him on the Bill Levinson Experience. He's grown an unbelievable company. He's a real trailblazer in the insurance tech world. So without further ado, I want to introduce Bill, and what we're going to do is have him just give us a little, let's say, 100-foot overview on himself and who he is, and then we're going to dive into the first question. So without further ado, we have Bill Atlee. Bill, you there?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Boy, that was like amazing. Listen to you talk about that journey. I think about this 23-year-old kid in college, a small school in Pittsburgh, and probably focused more on playing football and women and parties and in college. And you get out of school, and I told my dad, I'm going to be a life insurance agent. He's like, oh, great, we spent all that money on a 4-year degree, and that's what you decided to do. But I went out and sold about 6,000 insurance policies, and somehow, without a zero tech experience, have a company that has about 800 employees now, and it's just amazing. I tell my kids, look, you can be anything you want in life. America provides you the opportunity. You don't have to be the smartest, the fastest, the brightest, the best speaker. Just look for the opportunities. It's amazing where your career will go. But so thanks for the intro.
Yeah, no. That's amazing. How old were you when you started? So you became an agent, and then you were selling?
Yes, did that till I was 29, and I actually still maintain my life insurance licenses in most states because my customers, still call and want to update their policies, and it keeps me close to still selling and not sort of stepping away and just be a tech guy anymore. And no, I'm still struggling with.
Yeah, no, that's great. And my dad made me do the same thing, actually. I sold for a couple years and then became a true IMO or broker. So, yeah, it gives you insight on both sides, if you will. And just real quick, so how old were you when you started iPipeline? That was right after you were selling?
Yeah, 29 years old. I was having a beer with a high school friend of mine who's describing this new thing that was coming out called the World Wide Web. And I was like, what is that thing? And we spent hours noodling what it was, and then he told me of a new technology called a PDF. And I was thinking, man, if we could figure out a way to get forms that were filing cabinets all around my office into this PDF and onto this thing called the World Wide Web, man, that would be amazing. And that was the beginning of the whole story.
Wow. And you started just by yourself? It was just you?
I had a couple investors, a couple guys that I knew, and we started cranking out. You had the money guy, you had the guy that understood the technology, and then myself with the inside knowledge of insurance. But at this point, I'm the last one of us who's still standing. They've all moved on.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, and like Bill said, they're in 4 countries now with over 800 employees, from a conversation that started over a beer. So that's that. I love to hear that stuff. Okay, we'll start with the first question. We'll dive right in, and this is a typical, podcast webinar question, but obviously everyone has a different answer. I would love to hear Bill's take on this. What would you tell the 25-year-old Bill if you were able to go back in time? What would that advice be?
You tell him a lot of stuff, wouldn't you? I'd probably tell him that life's not going to go according to plan, as I just mentioned. There's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of success and failures. I wouldn't waste a lot of time worrying about it because most likely it's not going to turn out as I thought it would be anyway. I think someone told me a great analogy to that was the story about Jim Thorpe. In 1912, Jim was representing the United States in the Olympics for track and field. And on the actual morning of his race, his sneakers were stolen. And he could have panicked, but what he wound up doing is finding an old pair that was someone threw away in a dumpster. Ironic part is that they were 2 different shoes, and one of those shoes was actually 2 sizes larger than his foot, and he wore several pairs of socks on his left foot just to be able to make it fit. He actually went out and won 2 gold medals for the U.S. that day. It sort of reminds me that some people make excuses. Some people get results, but you can't do both. So I would tell, 25-year-old Bill, you're going to face a lot of adversities in life's race. Don't make excuses. Don't have pity parties. Just persevere, stay the course, and above all, you got to trust your gut. I sort of remember that line in the movie Airplane, "We're all counting on you." The fact is that 65-year-old Bill is really counting on decisions that I make as a 53-year-old today. And today's 53-year-old was really counting on the decision that 29-year-old Bill made several years ago that were tough decisions that led me to really where I am today. So I know that those decisions are not always made with a lot of experience. It sort of reminds you of a dentist. They asked a 40-year-old dentist, why did you want to be a dentist? And he said, I didn't decide that. Some 18-year-old kid decided I was going to fill teeth the rest of my life. So the bottom line is, I got a responsibility, and you have a responsibility to do future self. You can't predict the future, but you can surely plan for it. And you got to understand what your future self, how they want to live, and what your needs are going to be, and then plan for that. I knew that before my kids were even born, I was going to pay for the college education, and thank God, my past self planned for that. But you just can't wander through life. You have to at least try to attempt to plan for what you think you're going to be and do in the future.
Yeah, no, that's strong, and I think it's so important. You had this vision and you believed in it, and I'm sure there were so many obstacles and people that said you were crazy and you're investing all this money into this company. I don't think it'll ever happen, and you kept your eye on the ball no matter what. And that says a lot about anybody in any industry. So I give you a lot of credit, and that's so true. Okay, let's move forward here, and we have a lot of listeners that are, like I said earlier, involved in our industry, and then other industries. Some just out of college or high school. So this question is pretty broad, generic. Do you have any career advice that would help our listeners remain focused and disciplined?
I think those 2 words probably summarize 2 most critical things of success. When you think about, and I don't know if you ever realize this, in World War I, the average soldier shot 7,000 rounds for just 1 confirmed kill. And by World War II, a soldier shot 10,000 rounds for every one confirmed kill. And with all the technology advancements, soldiers in Vietnam really shot 25,000 times for 1 confirmed kill. Yet when you think about a U.S. sniper who trains excessively to just do one thing well, they shoot their rifle 1.3 rounds for every 1 confirmed kill. So that tells me when you practice one thing day in, day out, and you get really, really good at it, you become the best of the world at it. And the way to become the best at something is to aim small and to miss small. So this is what I mean by this. If you just aim at a bullseye, what most of us try to do, you don't necessarily hit it. You have to aim at something small with inside the bullseye, and that way if you miss, you still hit the bullseye. versus most of us just aim at the target alone and just typically there's random shots all over the place. And the reality is most of us operate our lives just using a shotgun approach. We stand there at 23 years old or 29 years old, and we think about our future career, and we hope for the best. And what happens when we shoot forward is, somewhere 30 or 40 years out, we had that career. But most of us don't hit that bullseye. So it does require, Bill, a lot of focus, a lot of discipline. I would say to you, be a specialist in something, not a generalist. Be better than anyone in the world when you do it, and you'll probably end up killing it.
Yeah, no, I love it, and that's exactly what I do. Same advice. I listen to that day in, day out, and like you said, be the absolute best. There's that David Goggins, Navy SEAL guy, that he basically didn't accomplish anything in life. He was focused on Krispy Kreme donuts and chocolate shakes, and was 150 pounds overweight. And something changed in his life, and he wanted to be the best, and he became a Navy SEAL, and he totally crushed it, and literally became one of the top SEALs in the world in all-time history. So, just like what you said, find that niche, whatever it is, and don't let anyone talk you out of it, and just be the absolute best at it. And I want to say this, with the internet these days, there's so much education right at your fingertips between audiobooks and, if you want to listen to any motivational CDs, books, Audible, Amazon, anything. So there's no excuse anymore. And I think it's all what you're going to get out of it is what you put in it. It's an old saying, but it's so true. Okay, let's move down one here. And what advice do you have for our listeners on making tough decisions, handling, roadblocks, say, on a business level, on a personal level? Is there anything that you think about or stay focused on that gets you through these things?
I think when you're starting your career, you're trying to figure out what you do really well. Sometimes the world's got to kick you in the butt to tell you what you stink at, but I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase jack of all trade or master of none. I think that applied to me early in my career. What I mean is I was selling life insurance on the side, and I was really trying to build this software company called iPipeline. But Pipeline really wasn't making enough revenue to even pay me any income. So I had to survive, so I continued to sell insurance. The problem was I was splitting my time between two businesses, and really neither one of them was excelling or growing. I had a mentor tell me a story about Captain Cortez. In 1519, Captain Cortez landed in Veracruz, Mexico, and he was about to take on a great conquest of the Aztec people. And upon arriving, he gave the order to his men to burn all the ships. And his officers, they actually thought he was mad. And one yelled out, "How the heck are we going to escape here?" And Cortez knew that retreat is easy when you have options. And most of us cling to things that provide us an escape hatch. It's really just a built-in safety net. But the reality is Cortez could have kept one or two ships, but he knew the only way to get his men from not quitting was to take that option off the table. So I realized then in that story that I needed to personally light my ships on fire and focus on my vision of iPipeline. The company would have never prospered or grow without 100% of my effort. So normally I would say to your listeners, is the question you have to ask yourself is really what ships do you have to light on fire to truly commit to your success? And for most of us, one thing that stops us is just the fear itself. So take your options off the table and commit, and you'll probably be surprised at what you'll achieve. Yeah,
no, that's strong too. That's great. And yeah, it's just you hear about these stories over and over. How you have, let's say, little Johnny who's working in retail at a clothing store, and then has these three other businesses online and doing this and that, and then typically nothing winds up panning out. At the end of the day, sometimes you got to take a step back, put 100% focus in, and even if you're not making money or you're in the red for the first year, 2 years, 3 years, it eventually will turn if you become a master in that specific field, whatever it is. So that typically that's exactly right. Let me also get off script for a second. You mentioned about your mentor. I also have a mentor. I did an episode on Jeff Levitetz, who's the Cleveland Clinic Man of the Year, Forbes 400 guy, and he was huge. He was a big part of the change in my life when I was like 19. And, even till this day, one of my best friends and, just a super great guy. Couldn't imagine my life without him. I assume you feel the same way, Bill. You have a mentor that guided you in the early days and, kind of molded you a little bit?
Well, I'm going to separate two different types of people. Obviously, I would encourage people to get mentors, and mentors come and go throughout your life when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and some stay the whole time. And it's people that you have confidence and trust that you can tell them really your deep, dark secrets or where your biggest fears and concerns are. But there's also someone I would encourage you to get, which is a professional coach. This is someone who does this for a living. And I had a coach that met with me once a week for over a year and transformed everything I was thinking and flipped me around. So the combination of when you have enough money to pay for someone who's a specialist that does it, who doesn't know you at all, but just comes in and sort of calls you on the carpet and holds you accountable, and then mentors who are usually people who are friends or business folks that can supply, when the coach is not around for the other parts of your life.
Yeah, no, that's big. And my suggestion is, if it's a mentor, a life coach, even a good therapist, it's so important to have someone that they don't have a vested interest in you and totally coming at it from an outsider's perspective. I think is so important. Okay, let's move forward here. So, obviously to be successful in your world, in my world, in any professional career path, discipline, punctuality, respect, work ethic, always doing the right thing and being 100% prepared, even for this podcast, so to speak. So, tell us about, why you think that these things are so important and where this came from in your life, Bill.
Well, I remember my mom's always told me, do the right thing when no one's looking. And if you do the right thing, when you clearly know you can get away with it, then you'll probably no problem doing things when everyone is watching. I think we just covered a business coach because punctuality, he taught me was, he asked me one time, what's your relationship to time? And I said, well, I think it's a measurement. He said, you're wrong. It's about respect. If a room full of people are waiting for you in the conference room or on a call, and you stroll in 5 minutes late, you're just disrespecting everyone. So be on time. Discipline. I make my bed every day. There's a book about that right now, but I do believe it sets you up for the rest of the day and paying attention to details. So put some discipline in your life, whether it's working out, making your bed, being on time. Those things matter and they add up. Being prepared. You just covered that, Bill. I mean, I do about 200 speeches a year. It's amazing. I prep 1 hour for every 1 minute that I talk. So imagine if I'm going to be on a call or a speech for 15 minutes. That's 15 hours of prep and practice. I think if you want to be a pro, then put the reps in, right? And then last is really work ethic. There really isn't any shortcuts to success. You just simply have to put the time in and the discipline to stay the course. You're not going to get rich fast. Some people do, but the odds are most of us have to outwork each other.
Yeah. No. That's strong. I couldn't have said it better. That's perfect. I like how you look at the punctuality part as being respectful to the others that are waiting on you or on a call or, whatever it is. That's a totally new way of looking at it for me, and I think that's so important. Okay, let's move.
I got that from my coach, so it wasn't always that.
Yeah, it's funny. I got that from my mentor because I was that guy that always was 5-10 minutes behind. And what happened? We had a boat trip planned. I'll never forget this. I was literally 5 minutes late to his house, and everybody took off without me. I was literally standing on a dock, and I was so pissed off. But I'll tell you what, from that point on, I learned my lesson, and I said, I'm not going to be the guy left on a personal or business. That won't be me. Okay. All right. Let's move forward here. We have 3 questions left. I think this is a big one. You created a software company from scratch. What's the software that's running inside of you on a continuous basis? What's your operating system? What does that look like?
That's a ridiculous question.
I had to
nice
include at
play
least
on the
one,
software.
Bill.
I like that. Yeah, that's good. This might be hard to wrap your head around, but I operate on a principle called be, do, have. Be, do, have. And ironically, there's only about 5% of society operate that way, and because most of us, I'd say 95% of us, operate on a have, do, be approach. So let me give you an example. So let's assume you always had a dream of being an artist, and if you're like 95% of us, you start off, with the have, do, be. You say, well, I have to buy paintbrushes, and I have to register for college, and I have to go to class, I have to get good grades, and I have to graduate and get a job. Then what I need to do is use my education to perform. I need to do what my boss wants. I need to do the hours required to showcase my artwork, and maybe I need to do some promotions. And then, only then, when I work my way up to the top, I will be an artist. So that's a have, do, be approach. But 5% of us think completely opposite of that. They think the be, do, have. So if I'm going to be an artist and I want to be an artist, I be an artist in my mind day one. Absolutely convinced that it complete that I am an artist and I'm the best artist in the world. Then what I have to do is what successful artists do. They go to college, they get trained, they get jobs, they do promotions. And then I will have all the fame, money, notoriety that comes with being an artist. It's just too hard to work from the opposite direction. You can't work linear to try to be something and graduate and earn it. You have to actually immerse yourself and believe you are a millionaire. You are a great dad. You are a great husband. You are a great entrepreneur. Just be that day one, and then you will behave the way you have to behave to accomplish that.
Yeah, that's true. I just wrote that down. So be, do, have, and it's almost like the secret. The book, The Secret. It kind of says, create the vision board, or touch it and see it and believe it and dream it, and eventually, if you constantly keep that message in front of you, you become it. So it's very similar to that.
Imagine when I was 30 years old, walking into an insurance company, meeting with 55-year-old executives, talking to them about technology. And I wasn't even able to sit at that table with those senior people, and let alone know about technology. But I had to be somebody that knew exactly what he wanted to do from a tech standpoint and a vision, and then start to behave that way. And that's how you pull that whole trip. Some people say fake it till you make it. Maybe another way of saying it, but really it's the B part.
Yeah. No. I get it. And I seriously, I cannot even imagine, Bill. Like, I remember sitting with you at like Accord Limra on the panels, and at NALBA, and talking to these people on why it's so important to have, let's say, a paperless application. And I remember, like, they looked at us like we had two heads. I mean, they were asking questions and being so negative, and and talking down, and we were trying to say, guys, this is the future. So I was only on a panel with you for a short time, but I cannot even imagine what you had to go through even before those days, to stay on this path. So my hat goes off to you, truly. I mean, it's unbelievable, and to look back then and then see where we are today with technology in the insurance world is mind-boggling to me. It's nuts. Okay, now, again, another question that we all look at differently, and this has a different meaning to everyone. I'm curious to see what Bill's take is. How do you define success?
I really think of that, ironically, is the 5 Fs, with his faith, finance, fitness, friends, and family. And it's a balancing act. Some of those Fs are rubber balls, some are glass balls. So, when you think about some of the things that balance is sometimes your faith. You skip church on a Sunday, or don't go there for a couple of weeks. Maybe you don't see your friends, as much as you want to. But some of those items are glass, which obviously your family. You can't drop your finances and go bankrupt. So to me, when someone says how successful is that person, you can see a well-rounded person from how they balance all those 5 Fs to be a complete human being, not just judge them on the amount of money they make, or their title, or their status, or what kind of car they drive.
Yeah, no, that's big. I just wrote that down. So the 5 Fs, right? That's how you define it?
Faith, finance, fitness, family, and friends.
Love it. Love it. Okay, and our last question before we wrap up here is, you look at where you are today, obviously how you started, okay, which basically you, and then I think you said a couple years after there was 3 of you. You now have over 800 employees that operates out of 4 different countries worldwide. Surely your role has changed over the last 23 years at iPipeline. What are you up to now, and how do you spread your message? I think this is a good one.
Well, I always get labeled as the founder, but my title is the Chief Strategy Officer. And really, I think in simple terms, I'm the mouthpiece and the messenger of change. I think it was Abe Lincoln that I have a sign in my house that said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So what I attempt to do is drag others into my future world as I see it, and then versus try to guess where the puck's going. As a strategy person, like, what do you think the world's going to look like? I have no idea, but I can define what the world looks like and make you believe that that's what it is. And ultimately, you just covered that, Bill. When you and I were, in different meetings and people were naysaying, we were dragging them into our world the way we saw it, and eventually we got it right. But it's not always that case. I love the analogy and story about what happened in April 18th, 1775. This man gets on a horse and makes a midnight ride through Roxbury and Brooklyn and Watertown and Waltham. Purpose was to tell the townspeople the British were coming. And his name was William Dawes. Now, you probably have only heard about Paul Revere because he's the one that rode from Charleston to Lexington. So why did Paul get all the credit and William Dawes barely was even mentioned in history? The real answer is that William Dawes was from Boston, and he was not from Roxbury Brook and Watertown and Waltham. And most likely when he rode through those towns, he was a complete stranger. In fact, he's probably just somebody that they thought was just drunk riding a horse in the middle of the night. But Paul was, he was a well-known statesman, and when he rode into town, he knew exactly who the town fathers were. He knew who the militia commanders were, and when he knocked on their doors, he was able to create a word-of-mouth epidemic that William Dawes could not. So I tell you that story because, you must build trust and credibility in your business for others to want to follow you. You just said that, Bill, about following iPipeline. We had to build some common camaraderie and trust and share the vision. But when you stand up for what's right, your core values, the vision of your future, you create your own word-of-mouth epidemic, and then people will follow. And as I mentioned before, there's no shortcuts in business, so you've got to earn the success by helping others, and that takes relationship building and trust. I've been fortunate enough to ride iPipeline's horse and spread our message for 23 years, but I constantly remind myself that it's my job to make people uncomfortable. If I can make them uncomfortable, then I can move them to change, and frankly, that's the only way that I know how to affect the future.
Yeah. Boy, that's so true. And you're right. That's exactly what we did in those meetings, and look what happened. Okay, obviously it worked because we're in a totally different place now in the insurance tech space. So,
well, you became the messenger too. When I told you my message, you spread it to your agents, and you spread it to so it takes a community to get the word out. It just can't be one individual.
Yep, and I believed in it, and I truly believed in it, and I saw, what the change could look like, because we also saw other industries that were doing it, and we're all scratching our heads saying, why is the life insurance world not to where say the auto industry is, or why are we so far behind? And Bill was the one that had the vision and then put the work behind it and made it happen. So it's a great story. It really is. I think you should look at writing a book eventually, Bill. I don't know if you've already spoken to someone, but I think it would be great for the younger generation to look back at this story. It's really unbelievable.
Something you do in your 60s on the beach, so we'll figure that out.
Yeah, yeah, we're not there yet. All right, Great stuff. So what I'm going to do, we'll wrap up. I'm just going to say a couple of things, and then, Bill, if you want to mention anything before we end. So I took down, some notes for myself. This was great. I've spoken to Bill, a million times already, but I got a different insight after today's podcast. I wrote down the 5 F's, I think is strong. The B, do, have. Obviously staying focused and, keeping your eye on the ball, even against adversity. And, you have, 100 people from compliance saying, you're out of your mind, this is never going to work. But, staying focused on your message and eventually helping the community, the agents, the consumers, right? And even the carriers. So I love the story, Bill, and I appreciate you taking the time and sharing this today. Do you want to end with anything before we wrap it up?
Well, first I want to thank you for hosting me, but I also want to thank you for your business. You were there when there was nothing, so I never forget who gets you there, and never turn your back on those folks that made you who you are, and be humble about that. So I appreciate, Bill, what you've done for me and iPipeline, and thanks for hosting me. And for those who are listening, and if you're in the insurance business, man, this is the toughest business out there. I have never, in order to sell 6,000 policies, I had to take 24,000 no's. So you become a person that I already know that you're a person that can handle rejection and you can persevere, so I don't have to explain that to you because you're in our space. But get up every day, no matter what happens, somebody's going to kick you in the butt. You're going to get there, and you're going to turn around 20 years from now and say, how did somebody's going to have you on a podcast or a radio station asking you how you were successful, and it'll be because you put one foot in front of the other and didn't take no for an answer. So keep your chin up and keep moving forward.
Yep, love it. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're already one step ahead. So I hope you wrote down some great notes, Bill. I appreciate those kind words. Thanks for taking the time. Have a great rest of the day and good selling. Take care.
Take care, guys.
Thank you for joining us for the Bill Levinson Experience. Please feel free to share this podcast with anyone you think would be interested. You may also visit levinsonandassociates.com and all of Bill Levinson's social media pages for more information.